So what we wanted to do with the big debate, what we're going to do over the next sort of like 45 minutes is I'm going to let these guys introduce themselves along here, but just to frame it is what's really, really good is to get these guys on the stage and ask them the questions, because sometimes it's sort of like, we can all chat in the aisles, we see each other at events and stuff like that, but it's actually quite nice sometimes for you guys to hear the story that these guys have been on, because I pretty much, looking down at it, I pretty much know these guys for some of them for 20 odd years, and I've worked very, very closely with them. They've all been on a massive journey on sustainability, and I know it's a bit of a if I do drop a odd swear word in, I'm really, really sorry. If you don't like it, you can leave. But the J word sometimes the journey word can be a bit wanky, and people can go, oh, it's a bit X factor. But it has been a journey, and I've been in sustainability for about 20 years, and these guys can back me up. I was talking about it when people really, really didn't want to talk about it, and you've got a few of you here also as well as you've started some stuff up new. You guys have been pioneers of sustainable materials, alternative materials, and obviously you've then got the use of and driving production and stuff as well, and new initiatives. Like recycling, but we'll talk about that in a moment. And then we've got Dom here, who's absolutely leading the way on carbon and measurement. So what I think we'll do is we're going to split it into, I'm going to be asking a bunch of questions around how they've done it, what have they worked on, and we can challenge them. And we've got some set questions, but as always, we'll go off topic as well. So, but nothing scary for these guys. So I think it'd be really good for the audience if you sort of like go along and introduce sort of like who you are, what you do, and I think the interesting part will be where are you in your journey, and who are you dealing with at the moment, and what's changed, and then I'll come back to it and I'll sort of unpick each one as you say who you are and what you've been doing, because I'll pick up the interesting bits and then we'll sort of follow that format for the next 30-40 minutes. So I'm only just going to start from here because it's obvious to work along there. So Dom, introduce yourself and then we'll go from there.
Hi guys. Yes, I'm Dominic Harris. I'm the founder of Quota. We're a specialist carbon measurement business, consulting and technology for the print, packaging, display sector. Interesting point about where you started, because I started in the print industry when I was 16, right? So I've been in this sector forever, because I'm quite old now. And ultimately, I set Carbon Quota up 5 years ago because there's a lack of scientific measure that sits behind the word sustainable. The word sustainable is a great word, understand it, but you've got to have scientific measure. So today we are a team of 25 people. We're working with the biggest brands down to the smallest print companies, and we're putting science behind that word sustainability. So that's me. Yep.
Yeah. And just to pick up on a point there, because one thing I will say, and I apologise if I am going to jump in, but just to add context, is one thing, and when I'm working with those brands and retailers and companies, is if you don't get third-party verification on things like sustainability and reporting, it's worthless. If you think you can, please, if I'm talking crap, tell me, right? But if you can go and get carbon footprint off a website and you can do it, and anyone can do it, you could be wildly out. And secondly, anyone can do that.
60% out, you could be.
Yeah. So that's where Dom is bringing the discipline and the science into sustainability. And I've been super impressed with what they've done. And we're going to unpack a little bit more about measurement and that afterwards, and as we continue. Iain.
Hi everyone, I'm Iain Wallace. I work at Metamark. I guess it's probably known for introducing MetaStream recycling into the industry.
We'll touch on that.
I think as a business, it's really interesting listening to Dom and what you just said there. We're on a massive ESG journey. Lots of, us in the industry are. And for us, it's about, part of that journey is about making sure we've got the credibility to tell the story. Yep. We're looking at how our carbon footprint's measured. We're looking at accreditations, whether they be ISO, EcoVadis, things like that, to give the story some independence and some credibility when we're actually talking to customers and sometimes your end users.
Yep.
That's a really important part of I think what people might get out today is the fact that it needs to be a credible, science-based story that we're telling.
But I am going to come back, and once we go along, I'm going to ask individual questions, but I want to come back and I want to know the drivers for your sustainable journey, what drove it? Don't answer it now, but because you absolutely broke the mold when it came to recycling self-adhesive materials, and it was a brave move because it was probably the industry's biggest dirty secret was self-adhesives and siliconized liners. It was really the one that went under the radar. So I want to come back and ask you questions because I've been particularly impressed with one, the leap you took of leap of faith, but what drove you to make the decision to do it? And I'm fascinated. I think people will be to that as well. Chris.
Thank you. I'm Chris Green. I'm the Director of Visual Communications at Antalis. So for people who don't know Antalis, we're an international organisation and a merchant that sells papers, packaging, and a bit that I cover, which is visual communications products. And I've been in the market 30 years. And in that 30 years, I've pretty much been in charge of the product range and the development of that product range. And as Steve referred to right at the beginning, we don't think we change as a market, but when you look back, there's some massive steps that are taken and some massive steps still to take. So our journey in Antalis is about developing innovative products. It's about also trying to develop a framework around how we actually rate products. We've introduced across really every sector that we're doing now a metric called Green Star that allows you to ultimately put a star rating. So once again, if you're looking to audit your own material choices, you can have a reference point, which is something that we struggle as an industry in terms of trying to put at least a baseline where you can start improvement. But it's not easy. It's not easy. When you talk about the topic of sustainability, there is so much kind of coming out of your legislation. There's what people perceive as sustainability can be many different topics, many different subjects.
It's very multifaceted. And one thing I will do is I will come back about the Green Star system because you were pretty much the first ones to put a star system to it. We'll talk about pyramid, about how you categorize your products because you were very innovative about how you categorize yours. But Chris, like you said, massive journey. If we go back those years and we look, we sit here today and go, well, we had no alternatives to anything.
Yeah.
I can remember bringing in a honeycomb board from Zanita board, and I was laughed out of every single meeting I went into. Everyone said to me, "What a crap product that is! You can see the edging around the edging of honeycomb board." God, we worked on it, and I would walk into a brand and a retailer, and they'd go, "That's shit, get out!" I would never put that into my store. Now I could take it back, and they go, "Oh, look at the integrity of the material. We can see the," and I'm like, "Jesus, you used to kick us out and say that was rubbish." So it's amazing how it has changed and how material distributors, you've driven change, and I want to pick up another couple of innovations you've brought out because I've been super impressed by some of your new materials you've been bringing out.
Okay, hello, good afternoon. My name is Neil McCarthy, and I'm head of sales and marketing for Pyramid Display Materials. I've been in the print trade all my life. I started off as an apprentice screen printer when screen printing was a thing. At Pyramid,
We usually love screen printing because we used to get high on all the adhesives and stuff. You see, the people that laughing, no. You young guys, you wouldn't even, do you know? Yeah, it's just lovely. For us old boys, you walk into a screen print and go, it's going to kill you at some point.
I've gone all the way from solvent to water-based latex. But we've been involved in the sort of environmental side of display products for a good few years now. We first came across what Steve mentioned with move away from PVC to polypropylene. We work with big retailers like Sainsbury's who want to take out all the PVC for point of sale and replace with polypropylene products. We've done the same with first big sporting event we got involved with was London 2012, when again they wanted that to be the first Olympics without PVC on there. So we worked on a lot of the polypropylene with the products. So again, we see it, but sometimes we think we're getting somewhere and then we end up sort of going backwards in some ways. And probably one of the biggest things that holds back the whole sustainability thing is cost.
Yep.
Everybody wants to be greener. As soon as it starts to cost anything, people tend to recoil back and half the time go back to what they've always used.
So we will touch on price because that's one thing in the previous presentation I challenged. Is it perceived, and we don't answer it now, is it perceived? I think we showed that actually pretty much alternative materials and sustainable materials, now they've got the volumes up, are at pretty close to parity, if not many chances are actually sometimes are cheaper.
I think the problem we have it's actual manpower and costs of moving things around. So where big retailer will say, yeah, I want to recycle everything. As soon as you start to say, well, it involves collection costs going back to one depot, it might involve employing some people to bale materials up like self-adhesive. That's where we sort of hit a plateau. So yeah.
Brilliant. Thanks. And Brad?
I'm Brad West. I work for Premier. Our journey started from the display graphics point of view here in this very exhibition in 2019. So we're probably the babies out of the group. But myself, I've been in the industry alongside these other guys since I was 17 in various different roles. But for us at the minute, our sort of focus is very much helping customers not compromise their creativity for sustainability.
Yep.
So, like I said, we've been growing very quickly, doing all the normal things that we have to do with all the standard products, but now we're trying to finesse that and help find alternatives and also work with the guys like Vespa and Carbon Quota potentially and other schemes to try and help our customers educate them and make the right choices.
Brilliant. Thanks, Brad. So I'm going to come back to Iain and Dom in a moment, but I just want to look at you guys as material distributors, because you've got to find a new material. You've got a lot of things you have to think about, don't you? You've got demand. Who's demanding them? I mean, people have always said, make me this, or oh, it'd be great if I could have that. But you've got to put volume underneath it, and you've got to get manufacturers who can manufacture it. Then you've got to stock it, then you've got to sell it. What's been some of your biggest challenges when it comes to? We'll talk about Green Star and the boxes that you've made in the past with the samples in. What's been your biggest challenges about finding new materials and getting them to market? If I could ask the first question, we'll go back along.
Yeah, I think obviously you're always trying to innovate, and I think don't get me wrong, as an industry we're very creative and we want to be innovative. I think for me it's finding that balance. It's finding the balance of performance. It's finding the balance of getting the right pricing point, and then really getting the right supply chain as well, who are aligned to what your goals are. Yeah. I've got a clear strategy within Antalis that we want to drive polypropylene when it comes to plastics, just purely because it's the most recycled plastic.
It's simple. People can recycle it. So
once again, as an industry, if we use more polypropylene, we know that we can get more polypropylene back into base products, and you can get a secondary stream product. And that's our goal, which is to really drive that. But getting the partners, getting the volume, as Neil says, getting the infrastructure all in place to be able to do that, that's the kind of challenge. It's you start spinning one plate and you're going along and you're trying to line everything up, and in a perfect world, that's where we would be, but it's not that. And we have to work in small pockets and corners, and we all have been on collaborative projects, whether through its industry brothers, because we all genuinely believe this is the way that we want to go. We feel passionately about we can make a difference as an industry. So
that's interesting you said that, because you said about innovation. I mean, one of the things that has completely blown me away, and forgive me if you are doing these materials, guys, to correct me, jump in here, is it one of your koala products that you've got, which is a self-adhesive fibre-based material?
Yeah, that's right.
So if you go back a few years, the holy grail was, if you're going to be printing something inside, why would you use plastic? There's no reason to. It wasn't going to be weathered. It wasn't going to be rained on. So why wouldn't you have a nice self-adhesive fibre product? But it was never there. And you guys have launched it.
Yeah. So, it was in the Sign Awards last night. It was nominated for one of the products. So, that's...
Did it win?
It didn't know, unfortunately.
But a plastic one.
But, it once again, as Steve says, it's this breaking down of, I've always used vinyl, and this is what I'm used to. And I know the difficulty, particularly for the SME companies. You can't have a million products on your shelf. You have to standardise. But I think it's just, once again, it's just evangelising that these products are there. They are price effective. and they will actually do that application. You know, so
And that's been fascinating because I want to ask Neil a question here. Is Neil, and you've got your, what do you call your sample box now? Because you've moved it from green box to eco box, your eco box. But Neil, you were really at the forefront of creating your materials and taking them into your plastics and into your fibrous products. And you took that really early on, where you what drove you to make that decision to split them between fibre and plastic? Because you made it really simple for people.
I think we were just driven by the questions that we get asked on a daily basis, really. So what tends to happen in our industry is the brands will want to become more sustainable. They will go to one of their print partners and say, what have you got as alternatives to? And we really just picked up on that. And the two biggest things were moving away from PVC. So we collated a sort of collection of polypropylene products. And we did the same with the fibre-based products. I mean, in our industry, probably the oldest and the most sustainable, environmentally friendly product is corrugated board.
Yeah.
It's the FSDUs. It's been around since day one. It works. Everybody knows it. So we actually, if you can imagine a box, and we split the two into polypropylene as easily recyclable plastic, fibres. Half the products on the fibrous side have been around ever since I've been involved in trade. So things like display board, things like corrugated, had always been there. Poster papers again.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
all we were doing really was reinventing some of the products that have been there. But once you give them sort of environmental slant and explain how it's made, the display board's made from recycled metals.
And correct me if I'm wrong here. Were you the first one to launch a waterproof cardboard, your weatherboard?
Yeah.
So when you look at that, I mean, there's no such thing as an outdoor durable cardboard. And you look at it and you think to yourself, well, that should be easy. But think of how easy it wasn't to produce.
Yeah, that's for that product. It's sort of been and gone and died.
Yeah.
But we don't sell that product
No.
anymore. That was all for bus
sides, wasn't it?
side advertising. We wanted to move away from self-adhesive PVC stuck onto a fluted polypropylene Corex product. We then moved them on to an all-weather board, as we called it. So that took away any plastic. This is always a bone of contention. We sold it for years as being recyclable, but there was certain products in there that made it difficult to do. And now that particular application has moved on to direct print on fluted polypropylene.
It's gone back to a product like polypropylene, which is infinitely recyclable. It's polypropylene, isn't it? Because it's not like PVC that loses 80% of its strength the first time it's recycled. So it's amazing how we've gone this full circle. We've come back to a polypropylene, which can be taken out, chipped and recycled again and again and again.
So that particular application, I was down at the factory a few weeks ago. That's the first time I've ever seen true closed loop recycling, where it will be manufactured as a product, goes to the printer to be printed, goes on the buses, is collected, goes back to the same factory, is rechipped within, well, it's a £3 million investment for this particular factory, that then gets rechipped, washed the ink removed, and literally goes into a silo that makes the same product.
And that's a question that I get asked all the time. So if it's printed, it doesn't affect its recyclability, does it?
In this particular application,
No.
it's been the investment, for want of a better word, a giant washing machine
That can take the ink off.
washes the ink out of they actually re-chip it and it goes blue. And then that chip is washed to become white, that makes the...
It's back to be fair as well. But in fact, we'll come and unpack those as well. So Brad, you said you joined the sustainability journey in 2019, did you say?
We launched in 2019, but
So you sort of could learn from years of what other people were doing. What were your learnings then, jumping in at 2019 then, 5 years ago?
I think that the big thing for us is education. I think you've touched on it a few times. People want to be more sustainable, but then don't quite know how, or you mentioned earlier, they want to go PVC free, but why?
Oh my God, Brad, I get asked it all the time. And then when I send the question back to someone in a room, they could be a specifier or a marketer. They just go, I don't know, someone told me to be it, to move away from it. And you just think, if that's the level of education, we're screwed.
You mentioned earlier about fibre boards. Yeah, they're great, but then they've got their place.
Yeah.
So you have to use them. What's the point in using them if you have to replace? So I think that's the challenge that we've had and we're facing, is just trying to make sure that people understand using the right product for the right application. And then for us is working with our manufacturing suppliers.
Yeah.
They come up with solutions to, we mentioned self-adhesive paper, things like that, where we know there's a need for it. We've just got to create the right product and then be innovative and then educate the customers about where to use it and how to use it.
Yeah, and that's brilliant. And you talk about education, because I want to come back to what Dom was saying. So Dom, if we're talking about education, then what you do is part of the education process, because if we put two materials together, they're both white, they're both oil-based plastic, or one could be fibre, one could be, you're delivering the education which is backed up by the science. So
Yeah, through a number.
through a number.
The lower the number, the lower the carbon footprint, right? It's very simple.
Just give everyone sort of like a little explanation, not give your secrets away, but how do you then measure that then? What goes into the measurement of a material?
Yeah, so, well, raw materials are one part of it though, right? So actually we tend to look at it through a product lens, and raw materials part of that was about 50% of the carbon footprint, being very broad about it. So, you know, what people don't necessarily know about carbon footprint is it's described as CO2e. The E at the end is very important.
The equivalent.
Is the equivalent, yeah. So it's an amalgamation of all greenhouse gases that get wrapped up in a financial model that says this is the CO2e number. And when you look at it through a life cycle of a product, let's say an FSDU as an example, you've got to look at the raw material
Know what
content.
an FSDU is? Freestanding display unit. So sorry, Dom.
Being technical.
Yeah. So when you go into a store and you see a freestanding display unit with shelves on and you've got products on, that's an FSDU. Sorry, everyone.
Yeah. So
Acronyms.
So when you look at a life cycle of a freestanding display unit, you've got to allow for the upstream transport, you've got to allow for how it's printed, and then how it's manufactured, what raw material goes in or not, and then how it's transported to store, what happens to it after the store. Now that's a life cycle, an end-to-end life cycle.
When you say after store, you mean recycling?
Yeah, if it's recycled or not.
To you in a minute, yeah.
So actually, it may not be the case, and this is one of the challenges with carbon footprint is sometimes carbon footprint can be higher for a product that's recycled. That doesn't necessarily make it wrong, though.
And okay,
Yeah.
just in real simple terms then, why would a product have a higher carbon footprint if it's recycled? Because I would automatically go, recycling a product must have a lower carbon footprint.
Not always. No.
So what's the reasons?
A lot of it's down to the recycling process. And we mentioned it earlier that if a product's at the end of its life, at the back of a store, whatever it might be, that's then going to be collected, transported, and then there's energy needed to clean and recycle that product. So, but that doesn't make it bad for the environment just because it's got a higher carbon footprint. And you and I both know the example of Lush, who make a specialist paper actually out of banana leaves. It has got a much higher carbon footprint than a traditional paper.
Virgin paper, yeah.
But the amount of help they give that community, because they're making the paper in Sri Lanka, blah blah blah, it has so much other more wider sustainability benefits. So it's worth doing.
It's bigger than the actual number. Right, okay.
But ultimately, the number is the number. And when people say this material is greener than that material, that is, and you mentioned it earlier in your speech, you can't say that now. You've got to be able to say scientifically the carbon footprint is 1,000 versus 1,200. Therefore, the 1,000 is better for the planet. There's no two ways about it. But then also consider what happens at the end of its life and whether it's recycled or not.
So you mentioned Lush. Just give everyone a little flavour of, if you can, obviously for confidentiality. Who are the sorts of companies you're currently working with to measure those sorts of?
Well, Lush is one of them, right? So Lush was one of our first customers, and you were talking about it earlier. Just incredible how they approach their retail estate, how they approach their point of sale, their signage, their vinyls. But what we typically end up doing is dealing with a brand like Lush, and Lush then ask us to deal with their supplier. So you have to work on both sides of that spectrum, because what Lush actually wanted was carbon footprint of every single piece of printed product they put into retail.
Wow.
That's a fairly tall order, right? So we've automated that process. We've got lots of really cool tech that does that for the printers, a company called Dayfold, really nice print business. And we've automated carbon footprint. So what Lush do is when they're trying to source a new product for a store, they'll go to their print supplier.
They have to get it
And they get the carbon footprint with the quote of the job.
before they've even gone into.
Before they've even made the mistake of putting it in store. And that's the important thing, is if you can measure before you commit to making the product, that's clearly going to be a better decision to make, right?
Yeah, yeah.
If you measure after the product's been committed and it's in store and it ends up in landfill or recycling, it's too late then.
Yeah.
So that measurement process is really important. As you know, you hear the phrase eco-design a lot, right? Ultimately, that's what we're doing, is eco-design with carbon.
I saw the other day that 80% of the environmental or sustainable impact is determined at the early design stage.
Yeah.
I think that came from Ellen McCarthy Foundation.
Yeah.
Just remember that 80% of the environmental impact is at the beginning stage. So if you get it wrong at the beginning, it'll always be wrong. But that's fact. You mentioned about end of life, and I wanted to touch with you, Ian, because self-adhesive materials and siliconized backing papers were always the biggest industry's challenge. I said biggest dirty secret earlier, which is probably a bit harsh. Can I retract that? Can I retract it? No. Okay, I won't. It's on camera, so I can't retract it. So what drove you to make this in? Because that was really innovative what you did, and tell everyone what you did. And you just, when you say before, you just mentioned it, but what you did there was groundbreaking. No one had done it before. Tell everyone what you did.
Sit down and get yourselves comfortable. It could take a while. I'm only joking. You want to see your wedding speech? It's amazing. It was literally, we had a sales meeting just before first lockdown. And Paul French was here today, my chairman and CEO at the time, said, "Oh, does anybody fancy looking at a carbon reduction program?" And I went, "Yeah, I'll have a go at that." Lockdown happened.
It sounded a sexy project.
Lockdown happened. Lockdown happened. I went back and said, "I reckon I can recycle our stuff." And Paul said,
Really?
"What? Seriously?" I said, "Yeah, I can do the paper. I'll do the paper and the PVC." Trying to make the long story short,
So I am going to interrupt because I'm fascinated. Did you, at that point, and obviously not to give any corporate secrets away, did you know you had a route for the face film and the liners already, or did you have to go and find them?
when I came back with the answer, I had a route.
Okay. So that's fascinating because at that point,
I know. No, I mean,
no one else had done it.
no one else, no one else had done it. And I'm not, so these guys are lifelong signage guys. I'm an idiot from the railway industry. I didn't know signage till 7-8 years ago. I don't know anything about recycling until 5 years ago.
But maybe that fresh thinking enabled you to maybe not look at the barriers that we all think in our industry.
And that's the reality, is you actually just go away and sort of, the real drive of it, I guess, is what I've always done has been a sales guy. So go to your customer and go, what do you need, or what do your customers need? What are they asking for? And that's what they're asking for. They're asking for something that was sustainable is a word that needs definition. They wanted something that they could use. And recycling, remembering that liner's half our problem. It's literally square metre of vinyl weighs the same as a square metre of liner. 140 GSM, pretty much across the board. So the liner's this dirty little secret because everyone sees the PVC on their vans, on their trucks or whatever.
They don't see the meter that's left in the
Well, they don't see the 2 meters because if you're laminating it, you've got double trouble. So,
Good. Oh, can I use that in another presentation?
I'm not sure it's mine for you to give away, but
I
yeah.
can quote that now, can I?
The crux of it is actually we figured out a way of doing it. We're not turning product back into graphics product. Can't be done. You can do some stuff with post.
Yeah. Sorry,
My world. Sorry.
Look at this gentleman, because this gentleman's from the polypropylene industry.
Yeah.
An interesting conversation in the break about polypropylene, like Neil was saying about being recyclable. So,
And polyprops, it is brilliant, but there's only so much things it can do right now, I would suggest. But I do like it. Don't get me wrong. Not slagging anyone off. So yeah, we don't turn it back into post-commercial. It can't be turned back into product again.
but can we ask what you turn the face film into?
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, you want the answer? So it gets various things.
See, I know lots of this stuff, and I'm really, really mindful of the fact that I know a lot of confidential stuff. So I sometimes forget what I do know and what I don't know. So if I'm asking a dumb question, it's so I don't want to break any confidentiality.
So the answer to that is actually we're fairly open. We take our customers, all our customers that are on the programme have been and seen it. They've ordered it, they've done their due diligence, and we're relatively open about what we turn it into. Essentially, two products: a flake product, which is purely just a chipped PVC, whether it's been printed, whether it's self-coloured, whether it's laminated, doesn't matter. That literally gets turned into quite simple products, traffic cones, all those kind of things. But all of those can be recycled again.
So you're making feedstock for another product.
That's for that, and then we actually make little feedstock pellets as well, which go into various other things. That can go into being made wheelie bins, etc.
Okay.
So I like them both. The chipping takes less energy, so I like that. Going back to how much carbon footprint there is, and that tends to stay in the UK. When it gets turned into the pellets, it gets made into that in the UK, but it can be shipped anywhere around the world. But the variety of product it can be turned into is much greater. So it has both have their benefits. The liner, the PE is stripped off and goes to be recycled, and the paper, people that do the recycling is a paper mill here in the UK. The paper is actually used for various things. One of the things we use it for, we make notepads for our customers when we give them out. That's not all that happens to it, but it can be potentially turned back into liner if it wanted to be.
Is the ease of of stripping the silicone from the liner, is it because you've got a fibre on one side and the silicone lines on the other, which means it can be separated? Or is that
the restriction is actually, if you've got double coated liner, it's much easier because you get much better. It's all about how much yield you get much better yield out of that.
Sorry if we've gone real down a technical rabbit hole there, but you know,
and I repeat, I'm an idiot from the railway. I don't really understand this.
No. Well, what you just said there, because I'm going to go from looking at sort of like the material measurement side into what you've done. I'm interested then to talk about back to the distributors but you can't underestimate. We've had discussions over the years. You did it. You found a solution which was driven by your customers asking for you, and you've overcome the challenges. But very few people have done that.
And yeah, I mean, thank you. That's very kind. And it is my little baby, and I'm very proud of it. I think just to finish, it's about as an OEM, the journey and the detail is multifaceted. So yeah, we recycle stuff, and that's really great that we're able to provide a turnkey service. We go and collect it. We do everything. We try and make it as easy as possible to recycle it. The thing I always do is show someone a £20 note if my missus hasn't nicked it, and say, "Do you see these in the hedgerow?" No, why not? Because they're worth something. Yeah. And if everything's worth something, make it easy to recycle. Key one. The other part is that the journey isn't just about recycling. It's about, we're looking at carbon reduction. We're looking at how we power our factory. We're looking at a whole range of ESG kind of terminology and accreditation to make sure that we're continually trying to improve. Not perfect. Yep. We're trying.
Well, that's interesting then, because you bring up about education and stuff like that. And I want to go back to what I said about with Chris. So you started off with your green box. You then came up with your star system. Do you all know, have you all seen Antalis' green box system? Right, that you come up with that. How is that starting to evolve and change? Because I've heard that you're going to make some changes, or you have made some changes. What's the next iteration of the eco box?
So the eco box, and then obviously the Green Star system is probably pushing towards 5 years.
Yeah.
So it's a lot happens in 5 years. So I think what we've certainly noticed is the questions about the carbon that's coming on, and it's. I think we need to take the Green Star system really from a 2D model into this 3D model now, and give more kind of depth in terms of how do we put a carbon rating then into the Green Star. So I think that then makes it a lot more viable, and then you kind of work that back then into your eco box and say, right, okay, let's refresh our products, and what then comes in and then what then drops out. And that's that's the key to it. And transparency is the key thing. Obviously there's a lot around legislation on greenwashing, etc. So we just want to be really clear on our metrics, and then how the products wash through.
Yeah, brilliant. I'm just looking at how long have we got more to go? 5. 5-ish minutes, because I want to make sure I get through all of you, and then I want to sort of like have a little think, guys, on sort of like on an ending of where you see it now and the future, not just for your company, but the future of your area of specifically on sustainability. I just want to go over as well, because I'm also fascinated is what's the next iteration of your materials that you're going to be coming through, Neil? Because you also have really created an education on materials which wasn't there before. Where do you see that going?
I think we're wrestling at the moment with the sort of recycled content versus recyclability. And I think the brands will always look at public perception. And do the public know that, for instance, polypropylene fin in a supermarket is easily recyclable? Or do they see that as a piece of plastic?
Can I just jump in? Do you actually even see it?
Probably not. But
There are reports that show how little consumers actually do see on their journey around store. And we put this massive focus on the material, how it's printed, what does it look like, and all of that. And you go and ask a shopper, name me 5 things you saw on your shopping journey, and they go, nothing.
yeah. So that's the thing as well. And it's, are we going down this easily recyclable route now, or are we going for recycled content? So we're just, our next box will probably be split between recycled content products and easily recyclable ones.
Can I see that before you launch it?
Well, I mean, the other big driver is that with the fibrous-based products, we're not asking a retailer to do anything but put it in the card and paper waste stream. And, you know, we've been caught out over the years on presentations. So, yeah, polypropylene is easily recyclable. Someone will come up with, well, I've been around the back of XYZ retailer, and he's got a mixed plastic bin and he's got a paper and board bin. So at least as we push in the fibrous-based products, you're 100% sure that will get recycled. So that's where we are.
No, thanks, Neil. And just to give context to that, if you go to the back of a store, correct me, jump in here, guys. A major retailer or brand will only have 3 bins normally. It will be normally paper or cardboard. It will normally be something like mixed recyclables, and the third one will be general waste. General waste is what, probably incineration or landfill. The middle one is tricky but if you can make it simple for a retailer to chuck it into a fibre or cardboard or paper bin, it's dead simple. So how do you see that with you, Brad? Because obviously education and that is a.
I think the challenge we've got is we're not all just dealing with big retailers. We're dealing with the smaller, medium-sized.
Absolutely.
Then we're talking about economies of scale, and that's where the real challenge comes in. And I think where we're talking about collaboration as well, and not just going back to the point about the Green Star system and CO2 as well. These are all great things, but all separate things, if you know what I mean. So how does the customer know, well, is that a good system or is that a good system? I think sometimes it can be, we're adding sometimes to their own confusion.
Yeah.
Collaboration would be good where, as an industry, we decide on what is the measure. It's the CO2. And then the customer knows that's what we're looking at.
It might come to that, Brad, because if you look at the food industry is going to be agreeing. I'm not going to convey. Right, I'm going to go again. But no, you're right. You're right. Maybe in the future we might see although some people might use it as a competitive advantage at the moment.
All good things.
The food industry is going to have a red, green, amber system, and everyone's going to have to adhere to it. It might come into our industry. We don't know, but that's a really good point. I'm going to take a little bit more of a look. So just to sort of like wrap up, I'd like to go along and ask you just anything you want to say about you, your business, how you're going, the opportunities that you see for sustainability moving forward. And it needs a bit of a sales pitch if you want it to be.
No, I'm okay with that, but yeah, I think a bit of guidance really. I'm very passionate about this industry, very passionate about the materials industry, and the most important thing is to measure and measure correctly. And actually, carbon footprint is the universal measure.
Yep.
It's used to measure everything in the world, right? From a sustainability point of view. So therefore, measuring is the critical piece, because how can you say you've improved if you've not measured in the first place? And I know that's cliched, I know that, but it's very, very true. I've got customers that have reduced their carbon footprint by 60%. So they can prove that. They're not just saying it, they can actually prove it. And that is because, what they're doing is better for the planet. And ultimately, we've spoken a lot here, but we're here, we need to protect our planet, right? And protect our industry the same way. We all consume too much. We all buy too much. We can't help that. Yeah,
Its own legislation will come and get us.
and it will. It will. I'm seeing lots of legislation in Europe, even in the US, even with Trump there, right? There's still legislation coming out of the US, and there are markets that are overtaking the UK market. Now, we are slightly behind the rest of the world, but we do catch up, so it is coming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you want to understand carbon a little bit more, go on to Carbon Quota and have a real good. These guys understand it in huge depth. So if you want to understand more about carbon footprinting, go to Carbon Quota and have a look at them.
That's the pitch, Steve.
Hey, I'll do it for you. Don't worry. Iain.
I feel like I've done my pitch, but I
You did a great pitch, but I'd be interested to see how you wrap it up.
As a bit of advice, I guess, if you're venturing into this and you're trying to figure out what it's like, then you've got to engage with every stakeholder in your business and also your customer, because you need that buy-in wherever you go, whoever you're talking to about whatever subject it is. For me, that's the most important thing.
Agreed.
But not necessarily a pitch for me, but really a pitch for sort of, if you're going to do the right thing, just get everyone you can involved in it, because if one person slips in that, it will just fall away for you.
Yep.
And that'll be a real shame, because to Dominic's point, we've all got to live on this earth, and I want my daughter to be quite happy, and her kids.
Absolutely. And I
That's how
will
it was
do
for me.
the same pitch at the end there. You want to look at recycling and how they've done it, go on to Metastream and Metamark and see how they've done it. They explain it. You can see it, and understand it, and go and see what they put on their websites, because it's fascinating stuff. So I'll do the pitch as well.
Yeah, and just for me, just like I say, I think we've all spent a long part of our careers in this. And is there an end destination, Steve? I'm not too sure. To be honest, I think it's a reiteration and an improvement and a refinement. And we shouldn't beat ourselves up that we've not got the answers today. But what you've heard today is that we're all pushing in a direction. We'll continue to develop products. We'll continue to look at recycling. As Brad's point, I think the win is when really the very small companies are fully committed to the initiatives around sustainability. But it's a journey. It is a journey, the journey word. And, we're committed to it in our long term. It's intrinsic in our business, in our CRM, in our ESG policies. So, yeah.
Brilliant. Thanks, Chris. So definitely go and check out their eco boxes and how they do the Green Star. It's a real good education for you to look at it and get a feeling for what is their measurement and how have they measured it in the past. And then in the future, like Chris was saying, is they'll look at carbon footprint or measurement in a different way. So definitely check their samples out.
Yeah, I think from my point of view, it's where we've launched certain products that we know are a lot more environmentally friendly than the replacing. It's either the brands or the printers. They don't give us any slack. It's straight away, well, we need it in an 84-foot 3 mil, an 84. We want exactly what we're buying now in, say, a plastic product in one of these new products. But these are brand new products. They've never been sold before.
No.
I mean, we had a great 5mm, really rigid fibrous board that was the perfect replacement for a 5mm foam PVC. Absolutely dead in the water, because people won't accept the fact that it's not exactly the same size, it's not exactly the same thickness. Therefore, from my point of view, it's just to try and get the brands and the prints to be a little bit more flexible when you're looking at these new materials.
And again, I'm going to do this. I'm going to definitely be waiting to see what the next iteration of the samples that and the materials that we're going to do on this recyclable and recycled content. I'm fascinated to see what your next journey is going to be with that as well, because you definitely led the way on that as well. So thanks, Neil. Appreciate it. And then finally to Brad.
Yeah, I mean, for us, I think we'll continue to try and work with our partners to bring innovative products to market, try and educate the customers as best we can. But the big thing for me is collaboration. I mean, individually we can make a difference, but collaboratively all together we can make a real difference. So that's the key for me.
Absolutely. And look, I haven't been on your stand yet, so when I finish up here, I'm going to come over and have a good look round as well. So anyone else can do this as well. So look, that's 45 minutes. We've gone over it by a few minutes. Any questions from the audience that you've got that you either want to ask or have been afraid to ask? Now you can always catch us afterwards. Oh, Jeff's gonna jump in. He asked a good one before about metal. I must admit that was a good question.
Yeah, thank you very much. So we talked about economies of scale. You guys have referenced it. I'm a sign maker, so I appreciate lots of conversations are around display, large stuff. But for the small sign maker, things like take-back schemes are really important for us. And I appreciate there's a whole cost that sits around that. Obviously, it's an extension of what Metamark do with self-adhesive vinyl and the backing liner. For the average sign maker to have a metre square dumpy bag for vinyl, for backing sheet, for ACN, for foam, for acrylic, for polyprop is a big ask. So what's the journey? And journey's a big conversation in all this. What's the journey that helps the small sign makers play their part? Because there's no established sort of route for standard waste management.
I mean, for me, what we're looking at with the festival waste accreditation
Yeah.
is possibly drop-off points. So rather than, the cost that's associated with logistics and picking everything up, is being able to provide a place where everyone, not just, small sign makers, medium signers, can drop their waste off and then it can be picked up from there. So trying to overcome this issue.
That's a really, really good point, because unfortunately, the waste industry works in completely the opposite way to the sign and display industry. What I mean by that is waste companies like loads of waste in a few locations. What the sign industry is, loads of waste in freaking thousands of locations, but little bits of it. And that's always been the issue with recycling, in our industry, is there are loads of materials that are out there in the world, in all of our different companies, and there's very little of it. That's the reason why I think Metamark cracked it. Vespa will as well in theirs, but Metamark looked at their customers. They knew where they were, they knew their volumes, and they knew the product. So maybe it will take other people to catch people up like Metamark to say, well, I'm responsible for self-adhesive material. I'm going to maybe be responsible for taking it back. Or maybe Festival might come up with the waste program to maybe have a collection mechanism. But that's going to be challenging because the waste industry doesn't work like that. But I think it's a great starting point. Great question, Jeff. All done?
I think we're all done.
If you could give everyone a round of applause, because these guys are giving their time up.
Thank you very much. And big round of applause to Steve as well. Great presentation.
There's no fee attached to that either. Just the prestige of being on the stage.
This is the honour.
Yeah, thank you very much.